Students, welcome back to American Government. Today, we're going to be talking in depth about why lawmakers or members of Congress make the decisions that they do, what factors influence them, and just really increasing our understanding of why these decisions are ultimately made the way that they are. So what we're going to be working out of today is the assignment, How Lawmakers Decide. And here are the directions. Here are our plans for today. Highlighted text indicates you need to write and submit information to this assignment. Ensure you've completed all requirements in the What to Submit section near the bottom. Participation will be rewarded for participating in class discussion if we do this lesson together. So we're really hoping to see what factors ultimately go into the decision what laws are made. And this is way too complex to cover everything, but we're going to try to bring it down to just a few factors and consider which factors are more important than another or than the other ones, and what additional factors we can think of just as we understand human behavior. So step one is to analyze these pictures. And so this first picture is the House of Representatives voting for impeachment. So this is not on a particular bill. This is going to be a separate thing that we're going to be talking about here pretty soon regarding the Congress's role in impeachment. But they voted for this, and it was largely along party lines. So what this means is that even though we have not gotten to this yet either, there are political parties, and in reality, we live in a two-party dominant system in the United States, Democrats and Republicans. And most members of Congress are associated with one of those two political parties or gathering of political ideas for members of those parties. And what we increasingly see, and this is not just for impeachment, but this is for a variety of bills. We think about like Obamacare, tax cuts, immigration policy. So many bills, and this is my forefront reason, so many bills are decided upon party lines, which means that Democrats usually vote as a monolithic block or like one unified block, and Republicans, generally speaking, vote as one unified block. You're always going to have outliers here and there, but generally speaking, you can see where voting is going to go pretty quickly. And people who cross party lines are usually seen as like mavericks or people who kind of exist outside of the system. And that is not common. It's just not. Party affinity or affiliation is one of the biggest reasons why lawmakers vote the way that they do. So we see here that for the impeachment thing, and we're going to be talking way more about this here pretty soon, they voted on 2 articles of impeachment. We see that all these Democrats voted yes, and the Republicans voted no, and same over here for these. And it says down here for the members of the House, there were 431 in that particular voting area. 1 Democrat and 2 Republicans did not participate in the vote, and 1 Democrat voted present, which is kind of just like saying I'm here, but I'm not voting. And so these ultimately really show the division between political parties. And it's not just that simple. Lawmakers don't just vote based on their political party. They also consider other things. As I tried to get across to you before, or to the class before, Congress literally just, they think about some people's opinions more than others. If you want to have a prominent presence within the mind of people in Congress, you have to notify them. You have to get into their minds. You have to follow them. We saw that one guy at one of the town hall meetings. He's that person in the health industry. He's yelling at his local representative. People don't do that all the time. And I'm positive that made an impression on the representative. We also have to think about big businesses as well too, right? So we have Secret Santa here. And this is kind of like an interesting view of politics in itself, but we have some Wall Street and all the big businesses that exist there from Congress, and it's deregulation, which means getting rid of government intervention. So to Wall Street from Congress. Congress is gifting something to Wall Street in the form of deregulation, which basically makes it easier for businesses to operate how they want to without many restraints from the law. So not only is Congress thinking about their own political party, but they're also thinking about big businesses too, and people who exert a lot of financial influence or money. We're going to go through a PowerPoint, and I don't usually like going through PowerPoints, but this will just kind of give us a good overview of this topic. And then while listening through the PowerPoint, I want you to answer and submit this prompt. Besides for the factors that I've covered thus far, I want you to predict or think of 3 other factors lawmakers should or must consider when they are creating laws. So let's go through this PowerPoint. I don't think it'll take too long. So voting in Congress, more than just a yay or nay. And instead of yes or no, they just say yay or nay. And we're going to think about 4 factors. Factor number 1, what does the Constitution give Congress the power to pass a law? If Congress doesn't think that their laws are constitutional, they're probably not even going to try to pass them. What is their personal opinion? What are the views of their political party? And what do the voters or constituents think? Does the Constitution give Congress the power to pass the law? And Congress, this is like, if you had me for U.S. history, you'll see that Congress is somewhat limited by what the Constitution says. And the Constitution only gives Congress certain powers. And there's the old argument, right? The Alexander Hamilton view of government that we kind of take a loose interpretation of the Constitution and mold it how we want. And then you have some people more closely to Thomas Jefferson who say we need to take a very literal interpretation of the Constitution. But here's the text itself from the Constitution. Congress is to collect taxes, to raise money and pay debts, to defend the country, and provide for the general welfare of the United States. So that's a lot of ambiguity, right? So you can take a lot of things from that. Those are just the basic phrases, but there are extensions to that. What does it mean to defend the country? How much money do we get to raise for an army? Congress has to sort out these vague, ambiguous duties and really give them meaning through specifics in the lawmaking process and bill to law process. They can also control commerce, that happens across state lines with foreign countries and with Indian tribes. They make laws about immigration, bankruptcy, establish post offices, and many, many more things. Declaring war, raising and supporting armies. And with the declare war one, we kind of think of that as the rule of the president, but Congress is responsible for signing off on it, as well as the funding needed to go to war. And they make, this is where it gets twisted, right? Or where it becomes kind of an argument. They make all laws that are necessary and proper for executing any of these powers. This is where Alexander Hamilton comes back, right? The necessary and proper clause kind of gives them leeway. So they can take the text of this Constitution and they can interpret it to mean more specific things. And it's up to the current people in Congress to decide if they think the judicial branch, the Supreme Court and the other courts, are going to or are not going to strike down their laws. So if they have a good finger on the pulse, if they have a good idea of what the judicial branch might or might not do, that's whenever they can really invoke the necessary and proper clause. Is what they're making laws about necessary and proper for executing any of the pre-listed powers. So sometimes Congress can do things that are not on the list, as long as it relates. We went to the quiz together. Personal opinion. So, like, members of Congress are people, but they're complex people, right? They're thinking about a million things every single minute. And so personal opinion factors into it, but personal opinion, I don't know how much it factors into it, right? They're thinking about people over here, people over there, what their constituents think, what big businesses think, what the judicial branch thinks. And sometimes I can question if it really is a matter of personal opinion, although that is a factor we have to consider. 3, another big one that we mentioned before, people in a political party share similar values, and they work for laws that reflect those values. So political parties have particular stances that they like to keep to. And that's why it's so common that you see members of Congress voting along party lines so frequently. Kind of like being on a team, they create bills that reflect their individual values. And then ultimately, it's what the voters think. So I had that example of that guy from that healthcare guy the other week where he's yelling at the guy in the town hall, or yelling at the congressman in town hall. That makes an impression of people. And ultimately, that guy from the 3rd district in New Jersey was elected out the next election, because that video was pretty big at the time that it was created, right? So again, having a finger on the pulse, having a good idea of what other people want whenever you vote. You don't want to compromise your values entirely, but you also have to appease certain people to get what you want ultimately through. And at the end, it really becomes about compromise, right? What compromise can I make here and there so that I can ultimately get most of what I want through here, right? So they have to balance these 4 factors, including other factors as well too. And I think we'll wrap up with that slideshow there. Whoops. And so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to find the assignment called How Lawmakers Decide in the OneNote class notebook, and notify me via submission once you've completed this assignment. This is looking at even more factors to consider about why lawmakers make the decisions that they do. I've mentioned 4 or 5 by now. I want you to think of a few as well, and this should hopefully really round out all the different types of ways that lawmakers can make their decisions. And so make sure that you notify me via submission once you are done with this assignment. And then I think I had a prompt in step 2 with the video as well to, predict or think of 3 other factors lawmakers must consider when creating laws. And those are what you submit. And I hope that helps you out. Please have a wonderful day, and please let me know if there's anything I can do to help you out. Otherwise, I'll see you soon.